Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad to be back with you. We're going to continue reading in our book, On the Shores of Silver Lake by Laura Ingalls Wilder. We're in chapter 20, The Night Before Christmas. And here's the picture. Do you remember last night how they were so surprised when they heard a man hollering? Because they thought they were the only people out there. Pa laid the fiddle in its box and opened the front door quickly. Snow and cold swirled in, and again a husky shout. "Hello, Ingles!" "It's Boast!" Pa cried. Come in, come in." He snatched his coat and cap, jerked them on, and went out in the cold. "He must be nearly frozen," Ma exclaimed, and she hurried to put more coal on the fire. From outside came voices and Mr. Boast's laugh. Then the door opened and Pa said, "Here's Mrs. Boast, Carolyn. We're going to put up the horses." Mrs. Boast was a great bundle of coats and blankets. Ma hurried to help her take off layer after layer of wrapping. "Come to the stove, you must be nearly frozen." "Oh no," a pleasant voice answered. "The horse was warm to sit on, and Robert wrapped me so tightly in all these blankets the cold couldn't reach me. He even led the horse so my hands would be under cover." "This veil is frozen just the same," said Ma, unwinding yards and yards of frosted woolen veil from Mrs. Boast's head. Mrs. Boast's face appeared, framed in a fur-edged hood. Mrs. Boast did not look much older than Mary. Her hair was soft brown, and her long, lashed eyes were blue. "Did you come all this way on horseback, Mrs. Boast?" Ma asked her. "Oh no, only about 2 miles. We were coming in on bobsled, but we got stuck in the snow in the slough. The team and the sled fell down through the snow," she said. "Robert got the team out, but we had to leave the sleigh." "I know," said Ma. "Snow drifts over the top of the tall slough grass, and you can't tell where the slough is, but the grass underneath won't hold up the weight." She helped Mrs. Boast out of her coat. "Take my chair, Mrs. Boast. It's the warmest place," Mary urged her. But Mrs. Boast said she would sit beside Mary. Pa and Mr. Boast came into the kitchen with great stomping of snow from their feet. Mr. Boast laughed, and in the house everyone laughed, even Ma. "I don't know why," Laura said to Mrs. Boast. "We don't even know what the joke is. But when Mr. Boast laughs—" Mrs. Boast was laughing too. "It's contagious," she said. Laura looked at her blue, laughing eyes and thought that Christmas would be jolly. Ma was stirring up biscuits. "How do you do, Mr. Boast?" she said. "You and Mrs. Boast must be starved. Supper will be ready in just a jiffy." Laura put slices of salt pork in the frying pan to parboil, and Ma set the biscuits in the oven. Then Ma drained the pork, dipped the slices in flour, and set them to fry while Laura peeled and sliced potatoes. "I'll raw fry them," Ma said to her Lo in the pantry, "and make milk gravy and a fresh pot of tea. We can make out well enough for food, but what will we do for presents?" Laura had not thought about that. They had no presents for Mr. and Mrs. Boast. Ma whisked out of the pantry to fry the potatoes and make the gravy, and Laura set the table. "I don't know when I've experienced a more wonderful meal," said Mrs. Boast when they'd eaten. "You didn't look We didn't look for you until spring, said Pa. Winter is a bad time of year to make such a drive. We found that out, Mr. Bose answered. But I tell you, Ingles, the whole country is moving west in the spring. All Iowa is coming, and we knew we must be ahead of the rush or some claim jumper would be on our homestead. So we came, weather or no weather. We should have filed on the homestead last fall. You'll have to rush it in the spring, or there'll be no land left. Pa and Ma looked at each other soberly. They were thinking of the homestead that Pa had found, but Ma only said, "It's getting late, and Mrs. Bose must be tired." "I am tired," Mrs. Bose said. "It was a hard drive. And then to leave the sled and come on horseback through the snowstorm. We were so glad to see your light. And when you came nearer, we heard you singing. You don't know how good that sounded." "You take Mrs. Bose with you, Carolyn, and Bose and I will bunk down here by the fire," Pa said. "We'll have one more song, then all of you girls skedaddle." He raised the fiddle against its nest, he raised his fiddle again from its nest in the box and tried to see that it was in tune. "What'll it be, Bose?" "Merry Christmas everywhere," said Mrs. Bose. His tenor voice joined Pa's bass, Mrs. Bose's soft alto, and Laura's soprano, and Mary followed, then Ma's contralto. Carrie's little triplet piped up happily. Let me see if I can sing this. "Merry, Merry Christmas everywhere, chariot ringeth through the air. Christmas bells, Christmas trees, Christmas odors on the breeze. Why should we so joyfully sing with grateful mirth? See, the Sun of Righteousness beams upon the earth. Light for the weary wanderers, comfort for the oppressed. He will guide his trusting ones into perfect rest." Good night, they all said. Ma came upstairs to get Carrie's bedding for Pa and Mr. Bose. "Their blankets are sopping wet," she said. "You three girls share one bed tonight." "Ma, what about the presents?" Laura whispered. "Never mind, I'll manage somehow," Ma whispered back. "Now go to sleep, girls," she said aloud. "Good night, sleep tight." Downstairs, Mrs. Bose was softly singing to herself, "Light for the weary wanderers." And that was a nice surprise. I'm glad they made it there safely. And now it'll be a bigger celebration for Christmas tomorrow. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house, out of your house, in the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. Good night, and God bless you.